I think we will go ahead and get started for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know more people will join in the future, but thank you again so much for being here. To the Women's Forum Community Speed Learning. Speed Learning. Today we'll be talking about how to negotiate your salary like a pro. This will mainly be for women working towards getting new salaries in new jobs and empowering themselves, maybe even in their current jobs too. Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump right into this conversation. And don't forget that this is being recorded as well. So if you miss some of the talk, don't hesitate to watch the replay back on the Women's Forum YouTube channel after this talk. Okay. Thank you guys all so much for being here. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society for having me today. My name is Kathryn Nicholson, and I am one of the senior career advisors at Ironhack France. I am an American, a global citizen living in Paris since 2018, and I've been working in talent development, more specifically in tech talent development for the last 4 years. I mainly have a background actually in international affairs and strategic conflict resolution. So I actually did a little bit of a career switch myself towards recruitment, tech, and talent development. And now I work at Ironhack France, mainly serving the French markets as well as the German market. I usually work with about 300 career changers per year. Focused on the Paris market as well as the rest of France and Germany as well. And I mainly work towards people doing career changes towards tech. So potentially they had experience in marketing, for example, and now they're hoping to become a data analyst, something like that. If you guys have never heard of Ironhack before, it's an international tech school mainly focused for career changers. We have locations all across Europe and the Americas, mainly focusing on web development, data analytics, and UX UI design and cybersecurity. So if you're ever curious about Ironhack, don't hesitate to check them out too. So what will we be talking about today? We're going to go ahead and get the conversation started. Just to launch into our conversation about salary negotiation, I would love to have some participation from our viewers. So please go ahead and respond in the poll that will be popping up shortly. Do you feel that you are being underpaid? I would assume that most of our participants here today are women. So probably it's yes, but please go ahead and respond to the poll so we can learn a little bit more about what our community is feeling today. All right, I see that the poll just closed. All right. Okay, so jumping right into things, we see that we have a overall 52% of people participating in our call today do feel like they are being underpaid. So congratulations to those of you who said maybe or no, that maybe you are getting paid a fair fee. But yes, majority of people in this world today are being underpaid, especially especially women working in different jobs. Some statistics to share, specifically from the Women's Forum Barometer of Gender Equality. Only 65% of working women believe that they understand financial values of their skills and competencies, compared to 72% of men with equal competence. So that is quite frustrating to see that maybe there is just some discrepancies into what we can actually understand about our value on the job market. Another statistic to share is that 31% of working women have noticed that they were paid less than male colleagues in equal competence in the same roles. So sometimes this can happen, of course, and it's partially for needing to advocate for ourselves, but also for many other reasons for sure. But we are trying to educate today and learn all together so that ideally all of you in the future can get those higher salaries and get paid more and more. Okay, so jumping right into our speed learning for today, I'll go through a bit of a brief agenda. As you guys know, we are going to be talking about salary negotiation, how to negotiate your new salary or your current salary or your next annual review salary to be more worth your while. But of course, before you can actually discuss salary negotiation, we have a couple of things that we would like to review. First, I'll talk about owning your own personal story and some personal branding. Then we'll talk about transferable skills, and then we'll get more into the details on how actually to negotiate offers. All right, so what is it about owning your story? Owning your story and understanding your own personal branding is really to have a deeper understanding of how you are different from other candidates and how exactly you can stand up against the crowd. So, what exactly makes you unique as a candidate in whichever field or industry you're working in? The first thing we like to focus on is your own personal branding. This is a way of branding yourself to the job market and differentiating yourself and standing out from the crowd and presenting your own personal unique value. What exactly you bring from your personal skills, your professional skills, your past professional experiences, as well as your personal experiences as well, and your educational experiences, everything. What exactly encompasses you as a professional candidate, and how exactly you can present that to the professional world and also to your future hiring manager or your current manager. You're trying to convince them to give you a higher salary. Next thing is what exactly is your promise? Crafting this promise requires understanding your values, your interests, your strengths, your personal qualities, and how exactly you can distinguish yourself against competition. Really understanding at your core what is your personal why, and what exactly are these values or interests, your strengths that encompasses you as a professional candidate, and what makes you different. And then, of course, what also makes you unique is knowing your worth, being able to quantify your experiences and understand at a deeper level what actually are your compensation expectations. What can you understand just from doing a bit of research, even before you start job hunting or before you start the salary negotiation conversation? It's important to do your research and know your bare minimum and know what you're worth on the market. Understand how much you might be worth considering how many degrees you have, how many years of professional experience, and so on and so forth. All right. Next thing I would like to discuss is transferable skills. Transferable skills is something that is not always remembered, but especially in my experience, because I mainly work with career changers, transferable skills and fostering these abilities are really quite at the forefront of what we need to do when we are talking about our own personal branding and what exactly we can bring to a new professional opportunity to make you different and more valuable in comparison to any other candidate. So, what exactly are transferable skills? These are skills that you bring from one job to another, one experience to another, and what type of value is added to your profile because you already have these competencies, so that ideally the future company that's hiring you, or the company you already work at that you're negotiating with, why are you more valuable than the new person, so transferable skills are usually more soft skills, but they are often a mix between hard skills and soft skills. This can be anything from communication to project management to work ethic, to creativity and critical thinking, problem solving, leadership. Really, there are so many transferable skills that go from job to job, professional experience to professional experience, or also from an academic experience. I would also mention for anybody who might be, fresh out of university, maybe you're a recent graduate, you still have transferable skills from your professional experiences and your academic experiences. Maybe you feel like you don't have professional experiences, and that's okay. You still have transferable skills from your academic experiences as well. Having that type of rigor to write a master's thesis is a transferable skill. Okay. So oftentimes when you are getting ready to have salary negotiation discussions, it's important to take some time, be reflective on your own experiences, academic, personal, and professional, and take some time to really keep track of all the different competencies that you have. May those be hard skills or soft skills. All right. Now that we talked about kind of the pre-work that you have to do before you're starting these salary negotiation topics, we're going to talk about negotiating. How exactly does this work? What are your best practices, and where exactly do you need to begin before you can jump directly into these types of money conversations? So, before we actually can have these conversations about salaries, about money, what exactly do we need to do? We need to talk about the actual offer. We need to have an in-depth understanding of what is this opportunity and how exactly to evaluate a job offer. Once you receive a job offer, usually you'll receive a phone call with a verbal offer on the phone, and you say, "Thank you so much." And maybe in the moment it will be kind of overwhelming. You'll say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." Oh, maybe you're so excited for your new job. That's great, but you do need to take some time to actually evaluate the offer. So once you do get this initial phone call, express your gratitude, express your interest for the proposal. But of course, please ask for a hard copy of the contract of the job offer. Ideally, the recruiter or hiring manager will be able to send you a PDF file of the offer directly to your email after this initial phone call so that you can take some time to really evaluate everything and have a deeper understanding of what is being offered to you. So, first of all, something that you should always ask is if there is a deadline. Have an understanding if a company is trying to hire somebody ASAP. Of course, that can be limiting on how long you can take to evaluate the offer. But to be honest, no company should expect you to accept an offer on the spot. You always should read all of the details before you accept any job offer. No matter how excited you are about the job offer, I would like to note, but take some time to evaluate it and make sure you have an understanding of, if they're willing to give you 72 hours, a whole week, to really understand the offer fully. Key parts of a offer to understand, of course, is your salary. That's probably the number one thing that most people think about. Salary, of course, is the money compensation, how much money is going to be in your bank account every month. Have that understanding, of course, but there are other parts of job opportunities, job offers to understand. You need to take a little bit longer to understand the benefits and any other perks that might be included in the offer. Maybe there is a gym membership that is available, or maybe the company reimburses you for travel expenses. These types of different benefits or perks are quite interesting to know as well. Other things to evaluate is, of course, the hours and the travel. If you don't know these already, you probably should know this information before, but it's always good to confirm once you actually have the job offer on the table. Confirm how many hours a week you're expected to work and how long exactly is your travel time. I know also potentially if you live in a large capital city, maybe you live in the suburbs, but the office is on the other side of the city. Maybe that's a deciding factor for you. It all depends. This is why it's so important to have a full understanding of what you are signing up for. Other things to make sure that you are evaluating as part of the offer is flexibility and also the company culture. Do you actually want to work for this company? I know most of the time when people are job hunting, people just want a job as fast as possible, usually for financial reasons. But also it's good to have an understanding if you actually match well with the company itself. So take some time to recognize the company culture, the flexibility, and how exactly it aligns with your own personal circumstances. It's always important to take a step back before getting too excited about a new job offer, to have a full understanding of everything. Then, going into actually negotiating, I guess this is still a little bit of preparation for a job negotiation or for salary negotiation and whatnot. As we move into negotiating a job offer, ideally, it's good to be aware actually of what the budget is and what the salary expectations are for this role from the beginning of a recruitment process. It actually is becoming more and more popular in the Western working world for employers to bring up the salary conversation earlier. As you guys probably are aware, we are in a bit of an economic recession, so money is even more of a topic. a topic, and this is something that actually is more and more popular to bring up in the first or second step of an interview process. So before you actually even enter a recruitment process, it's important to do some research, already have an understanding of what you expect, and be aware of if you can have those types of conversations with recruiters as well. I know that it can be a bit taboo or daunting to have money conversations, but it can be a very empowering thing to do. If you're able to figure out the budget of the job offer, that's always a fun thing. Oftentimes, salary negotiation can be a bit of a game where you go back and forth with the recruiter if you have these earlier conversations to understand the budget. But in general, if you are able to give a salary range from the beginning, ideally, your negotiation at the end of the recruitment process, once you have the job offer, should be a lot simpler, to be honest. Most of the time, getting 2,000 more potentially is not that big of a deal for most companies. So be aware of that, but I would like most people who are looking for a new job, especially, to be aware of the budget before they actually get a job offer, or simply you're wasting your time sometimes. If you get to the end of a job hunting experience where you have a salary negotiation conversation in the beginning about what your expectations are, but then at the end of the recruitment, they give you an offer that's really low. This was a waste of your time if you were never going to accept that type of offer. So usually it's better to be ready for these conversations early. And of course, second point, do your research. As much as you can, be aware of, different online resources like Glassdoor, Medium, LinkedIn, places where current employees of that company might be posting more public information. So it's good to be aware of for sure. And of course, while you are evaluating this job offer, make sure that it aligns with your top skills, your motivations, and aligning that how well it actually aligns with your strengths, your weaknesses, and your competencies. If you feel like the offer is not matching what you're able to bring to the company and to this role, this is where it's good to start the conversation on negotiating and trying to get more of what you're worth. And to be honest, I'm a strong advocate for negotiating. Obviously, I'm hosting this talk, so I'm happy to have this conversation. But in my work at Ironhack, this is something I do often with our students as they look for jobs. We have these conversations all the time, and it's really great to get more comfortable talking about money and negotiating what is best for you. And then last thing to note, I guess, here on this slide is take your time. If the company does give you, 48 hours, 72 hours, a whole week, take the time. Take at least 48 hours to really understand the offer, let it sit with you for a moment as well, and see how you feel before jumping into a new opportunity. All right, now that we had kind of some background information, some reflective period ourselves after getting the job offer, now this is where we actually can negotiate. Most of the time, salary negotiation is done via email in kind of a counter offer conversation. But it is true, sometimes these can turn into counter offer meetings or discussions. May that be a video call or in person. But ideally, you'll be having salary negotiations via email in a counter offer letter format. It's usually a better way of expressing and listing out all of the reasons why you feel that you should be allocated a higher salary. Because having this type of concrete list and finite details written out in an email form is a much easier thing for a hiring manager to take and bring to HR to see where they can be flexible on the budget. It's very important to include quantifiable proof, transferable skills, and any extra values that you bring, to this opportunity. What I mean by quantifiable proof is metrics. So talk about numbers. If you have any extra percentages or ways of quantifying the impact that you bring to this role and your abilities, include those, because that's actually like a neurological thing. When we hear numbers backing up information, us naturally as humans are more likely to believe it. We find it more legitimate if we have numbers and statistics to back things up. So take some time to really write out a nice negotiation letter or email. And ideally, everything will be negotiated via email. But of course, sometimes there is a counteroffer meeting, which is in person or a video call. And most of the time, those types of meetings, they can be very anxiety inducing to have that type of conversation in person or on a video call. But ideally, it's better to go into these types of meetings with a more positive intent, where you and the hiring manager are able to find a place where you can compromise in the middle. So it's still better to go into these meetings with a bit more optimism, while still understanding and standing your ground, and considering your non-negotiables and understanding exactly what is the bare minimum. Um, I guess actually something I didn't put on this slide, but something to remember that as long as you try to negotiate, that's good. I know sometimes companies really can have strict budgets. So I understand maybe you will get shot down and that's okay, but at least you asked. At least you know if they are able to give you more or not. So it's worth trying overall. It's always worth giving it a shot. Okay. All right. Now, this is a bit of a counter offer email example that I've built for all of you today. This is a nice type of format to use. It should not be too long of an email. It's nice to divide the information into shorter, more consumable paragraphs, so that the information is much more easy to understand and to obtain. But we can see some highlights from this letter. Um, I guess I can go ahead and read it for you, actually, because this is a nicely written letter. I hope you're well since our last meeting. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to run me through the offer on Friday. Upon review, I would like to schedule a time to discuss the compensation package further and if there is flexibility on the proposed salary. Please let me know what works best for you. With my 4 years of experience, this is where we quantify our experience, you see. With my 4 years experience working in project management in fields ranging from business development and account management, combined with my web development skills in JavaScript, HTML, CSS, MongoJS, React, and Git, and my global citizen mindset, I feel that an increased compensation proposal is justified as I am a unique asset to the team at Spendesk. I am a highly motivated self-starter with an optimistic outlook, ready to bring my experience and unique perspective to the development team. I would like to propose a starting salary based at 41,000 to 43,000 gross annual. I look forward to discussing this further, and I appreciate you considering my proposition. So I think that what we can see from this is that it's very important to stay professional, but stay concise and direct, and make sure that it is, understood that you are open to having the conversation. It's not that you are demanding this specific number. You want to discuss. You want to see if there is flexibility. And it's better to remain professional, and you don't need to act entitled in any way. But being, very descriptive on why you are bringing more value to this company comparatively to somebody else is important for sure. In the future, you guys know that this is recorded, so you guys can watch this on the Women's Forum YouTube channel in the future. Don't hesitate to take inspiration from this email that I've prepared. This was something that I worked with, a very similar email that I helped draft with one of my web development students from a couple years ago who was in negotiations with Spendesk, as you guys can see as our example company today. In the end, this specific student actually did get that higher salary, so we love that. In the end, I think he got 42 in the end, because after having 4 years of experience working in business development and account management, in tech companies, actually, I removed some details from this to make it a bit more flexible. But he was able to get that 42K a year, so we love to see that. And it's always worth trying. It's always worth asking. I think the original offer that they gave him was 38K, if I'm not wrong. This was maybe a year and a half ago. But don't hesitate to use this type of email as an example for, or inspiration for your salary negotiation discussions in the future. Okay, so we're coming down to the end of it. As you guys know, this was a speed learning. It's supposed to be quick learning. So we're going to go through some basics on negotiating, some best things to remember, best practices, and we'll jump right into things. So basics of negotiating. Of course, you should have salary conversations before you actually have an offer, but do not negotiate exactly until you have an offer. It's better to wait until you have an opportunity on the table or having the hard copy offer so that you're ready to negotiate. Second point, research your market value and how exactly to pitch yourself to employer to really promote yourself as a candidate and what you can bring to this role uniquely, not just any candidate, but what you can bring and how you align against other candidates on the field. And then third point, focus on your worth in the market because of your past experience and your transferable skills. This is your past professional experience and your academic experience. All of the different skill sets that you've built up over your professional and personal life, they always can be useful in bringing forth in salary negotiations and new job opportunities. Next point, I already said this, but never accept an offer on the spot. I do know people who have accepted offers on the spot, and to be honest, that's absolutely okay. If you get an offer from your dream company, I fully respect you just taking the offer. That's okay. But be aware that, it's better to negotiate. It's better to have these types of conversations first before you just accept an offer. But I understand if it's your dream company, I'll give you some leeway. Next point I want to say is try to negotiate with the hiring manager, not with HR. Ideally, the hiring manager is somebody who will be your manager if you get the job. And they are somebody who understand your skill sets applicable to the role more than HR classically would. So this is why it's always best to try to negotiate and have these conversations with the manager. And then this is where the manager can go back to the human resources or people team to understand the budget a bit further. Okay. Next point I want to reiterate is be confident and respectful. Really own your own value and own exactly what you bring to this role, but still be respectful and professional while you're having these conversations. It is not in your best practice to be demanding or entitled or rude in any way. Obviously, if you're too rude in a situation, a company could withdraw an offer. So be aware of that for sure. Stay confident and respectful of this opportunity because still you want to get hired. It's not guaranteed until that offer is signed. Next point I would like to mention kind of goes along with being aware of the time frame and being respectful. Do not drag out negotiations for too long. Ideally, there should be maybe one or two exchanges after the initial offer conversation if you want to have all these negotiations. But do not drag out negotiations for too long. It is true, sometimes this can happen in recruitment where companies don't want to have long conversations about this. And if they can hire somebody for cheaper, they will. So be aware of that. It's always worth your time to negotiate and to, really advocate for yourself, but be aware of the time frame. Do not let this go longer than maybe a couple of days, or a company might withdraw an offer. So be aware of that. Next point, know your best alternatives as well. Specifically, any of you who might be getting ready to job hunt, if you have other offers on the table or you're in other recruitment processes, it's good to be aware which jobs you're actually passionate about and which ones you actually want to work for, which companies you actually want to work for. So be aware of that. If a company is not willing to give you what you're worth, do you actually want to work for them? This is a conversation or a reflective point you can have with yourself to know your alternatives for sure. And last point I would say is please don't be afraid. Really just try. I know that money conversations can be taboo. They can be kind of awkward. Potentially, they can cause a lot of anxiety. And I understand that. It also can be cultural, depending where you guys live. Money conversations or salary discussions can be controversial, but try not to be afraid. I think that one of the most important things is, especially in this type of women community, is that we can empower each other as well. So don't be afraid of it. Try to stand up for this topic and to ideally empower others to have these types of more open conversations as well. So that ideally in the future, we're all paid better and we're all paid much more what we are worth in the future. All right. So that is pretty much my speed learning for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Now we do have some time for some Q&A. So don't hesitate to share any of your questions in the Q&A option here on Zoom, and we can go through them together. All right, let's see. I already see there is already one question in the chat. The question is, what do you do when companies ask for a salary expectation on the application form, even before the first interview? This can bias the negotiation. That's true. So, that is true. Often, maybe not often, but maybe a decent amount of the time, this can be something that is included on the job application, especially if it is a entry level role from what I have experienced. A lot of times companies will add this directly to the job application online simply because they want to weed out candidates that might be too expensive. So it is a common practice to do. At this point in time, when you are applying for a job like this and you want to be able to give out a good salary range, the most important thing for you to do is to research, to have a deeper understanding of exactly your worth on the market, and your worth on the market and your worth comparatively to that company. So like we were talking about earlier, understanding your value from all of your different competencies, from your academic, your personal, professional, all of these different lives you've had. How exactly do they align with the market and with the company? So it's good to do research and be reflective about yourself, but also research towards the company. You can learn more on Glassdoor. You can learn more on Medium, company blogs. Um, I even know of some people who try to have conversations with current employees on LinkedIn to try to get this type of salary information, but obviously that's a little more forward. But ideally, the best way to answer these questions is do your research and give a wide range on these types of salary questions so that ideally you'll be within the range that they're looking for. So, good question for sure. All right, next question that we see. I see next question is, how do you know your value on the market? That's about the same of what I just said. Do your research. Take some time to really be reflective on all of your personal experiences, professional experiences, your academic worth as well, meaning how many educational experiences, diplomas, certificates, XYZ, all of that. That will really help you understand a standard of your own value on the market. But of course, you also need to do research on the industry you're looking to work in and the location you're hoping to work. The salaries in Paris, France versus New York City versus Shanghai, they're all different. So depending where you are based, it's really important to have a greater understanding of the job market you're actually working in, so that you're able to project yourself better on that industry. All right. Next question I see is, do you have some advice concerning culture of negotiation between countries? This is a great question. And to be honest, the best thing is do some research. I am not specialized in every single country, obviously. I am an American and I've been living in Europe for 6 years now, and I'm mainly specialized on the French and German markets. So I can speak to those two markets. But for other countries, obviously, I can't speak to all countries. But ideally, do some research. If you are not if you're not a local of that specific country and you want to have that understanding, my first recommendation would be to talk to your friends who are natives, native speakers, native citizens, who are able to give you a bit more information, but also do some research as well. You can find this information online from YouTube, from the basics of Google, even using Chat GPT. You can ask ChatGPT to give me a general overview of, how salary negotiation works in France or something like that. You can find a lot of different resources online. But from my understanding, with at least for France and Germany, it's quite common to negotiate for sure. But usually after you're hired, this is where employers or employees do not always talk about money. So I'm an advocate to talk about money always and not hide anything, just be open with people. But it does change from country to country for sure. All right, next question that I see in our Q&A chat. When recruiters ask for your current salary, do you need to share it with them? Ooh, that's a great question. Whoever asked that, great question. So this is a common question, sadly, in recruitment. From my personal experiences and from my professional experiences, when a recruiter asks you what your current salary is, they want to know the bare minimum of what they need to pay you to get you to leave that other job. Um, so, for example, if you are talking with a company and they ask you what your current salary is, and you say you make 38K a year, and that's honest, they're going to offer you 40K, and they will not offer you more than that. So they're going to offer maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 to 5% more than what you currently make, just to make it just enough for you to leave. So most of the time, I think it's better to if a recruiter asks you this type of question, it's better to say that you make about maybe 10% more than you actually do. Uh, from my opinion, that's what I usually tell people to do. Or simply, if you don't want to share that information, you can give a range of what you make. You can say, based off of bonuses or based off of um, the last 4 years of my experience, I've been making an average of this to this. That's also a nice way of answering that question. But usually don't tell them what you actually make. I would lean towards tell them you make a little bit more than what you actually make, because ideally they want to know the bare minimum of what they should try to pay you to just make you leave the other company. Okay. There are some countries, not all countries, obviously, but there are some countries where this is technically illegal. Like, it should not be part of interviewing. They shouldn't need to know that information. So in some countries, you can refuse to answer, but really it's up to your own discretion if you want to answer questions like that. Okay. All right, next question I see. If the salary wasn't mentioned at all during the interviews, is it a red flag, or is it acceptable to show up, to send a follow-up and ask what the typical salary bracket is? So I guess this question is from Tessa. Tessa, it depends on which interview step that you're in, actually. If you are going to do, if you're just having that first interview and this wasn't talked about, then I would wait for potentially the second interview for the recruiter to bring this up. Sometimes conversations like this happen during the first interview, but it's also common for them to happen during the second step as well. It definitely depends. But if the salary wasn't offered, or pardon me, was not discussed at all during maybe the first or second step of the interview process, I think it would be valuable for you as a candidate to, advocate for yourself and start that conversation if you feel confident. I know not everyone feels confident discussing or starting that conversation, but it's good to have a general understanding. This can be one of the questions you ask at the end of an interview, and that can probably make you look very confident and potentially make you look, can differentiate you between other candidates, to advocate for yourself. But it depends. I don't think it's, I think it's better to have that conversation during an interview, rather than a follow-up email to answer your question a bit more generally. Okay. All right. Next question I have. If you know that you are being underpaid on your current role, is it better to negotiate it or look for a different opportunity outside? So that depends. That really is your own personal decision, for sure. Um, it is completely up to you. It depends on your own personal circumstances and if you are happy in that role or not. If you're working at a company where you know you are underpaid and you know that it is a place where you probably will not get a large salary increase at your end of year review, but you love the team, or but you love the work flexibility you have, or but you get good benefits outside of your salary. Maybe you love the gym membership you get or something like that. Um, it really depends. It really depends on your own personal circumstances and what is your bare financial minimum, that you can do to, live your best life and do everything you want in your own personal life outside of the professional place. So it depends if you're content in the job, if you're still feeling stimulated in that professional environment and you like your team, and you feel comfortable where you are and you're okay with that, but you know you're underpaid. It depends if you're okay saying. But if you feel, if you're in a toxic work environment or you are ready for a new challenge and you know that that company is not paying you well and you're ready to leave, obviously it's better to look for a new opportunity. I know, and it is important to recognize that the job market is not perfect. Right now, the job market has been a bit, honestly, very tight, and hard, especially maybe for the last I would say the last year, at least, the last year and a half, to be honest. The job market has not been kind, specifically towards junior candidates. I'm not sure who you are, this person who asked the question, but um, if you're in a situation where where you're happy enough, you're comfortable enough, that's great. If you're not motivated enough to leave, it's completely up to you because it is hard to find a new job. Um, but I would always recommend it's better to find the new job and sign the new contract before you leave your old job. But it's all about a balance and finding out what you're comfortable with. But yeah, it's a hard question. Very personal question too. All right, we see. All right, next question I see is in France. So hello, person in France. I'm also in France. It's difficult to discuss about salary with other people, friends or colleagues, whatnot, to get some understanding and comparison. Do you have some tips to unlock this situation with people? So this completely depends on your people skills. I know that me personally, and also from other situations that I've heard from other colleagues or other professional experiences I've had, and also the students that I work with, that this is really a game. You really have to either build really strong, intimate rapport and friendships almost with people here in France to get that type of information. Um, or you have to be in completely different positions. I know that that is an easier conversation to have. Potentially if you work in, I don't know, if you work in social media marketing, but your friend is a data analyst, those are very different jobs. So you probably can have those types of conversations with your friends because there should not be a lot of comparison between two different industries and two different métiers. So this depends. Honestly, is I agree with you. In France, it is difficult to have these conversations. And to be honest, you have to build a really strong rapport with somebody to get this type of information. Um, and yeah, it's really, you have to play around with your own people skills for sure. Okay, next question I see is how about an internal move from one entity to another entity? Should you share your salary? Because they probably have this information already. Yes, that's true. Internal mobility is a really fantastic thing. Being able to switch into a new position within the same company is probably a really valuable thing to do on the market right now, especially considering how hard the job market is. Um, but it is true. They probably already have access to your salary information from human resources. So it's good to be aware of that. Um, but it is important to recognize your value still that you're bringing forward into this new role. And honestly, the most important thing that you are bringing is the knowledge that you already have about the company. Uh, an internal hire, internal mobility is actually so much more cost effective and time saving than hiring somebody from outside of the company. So it's really important to when you are having these types of discussions, it's really important to focus on all of the information that you have about the company and all the different skill sets, all of the internal tools, the internal databases, the processes, everything like that. And make sure that's one of the most important things that you showcase to explain how much more hireable you are in comparison to somebody outside of the company. Okay. Next question I see. In France, there's actually, it's not that typically, to be honest, but in France, there is sometimes a salary grid based on what school you went to. Any advice on how to navigate that as a foreigner to ensure your school is valued correctly? Yes, this is something that is quite interesting. Here in France, there are a bit of salary grills or grids. Usually only for apprenticeship or alternance students or interns. And usually your salary is based off of what type of program your educational degree is. If you are a foreigner or an international person here in France, mainly you do need to have some type of um, evaluation of if you have a foreign degree, an international degree from another country, you need to have some type of evaluation of what equivalent that degree is. So you need to have an understanding of what is if you have an American bachelor's degree, what is that here in France? In France, a bachelor's degree is a bac plus trois. So ideally on the salary grid, you would be making the equivalent of a bac plus trois. which is your baccalaureate plus 3 years of education. Even though in the United States, most bachelor's degrees are 4 years, but in France, this only counts as a 3-year degree, your bachelor's degree. That's just one example that is good to be aware of for sure. But it takes time. It takes time and some evaluation of what your other degrees are worth. So this is important, again, to research, to understand what your degree is. If you have a master's degree, this is usually a Bac+5 or Bac+4 or something like that. But you have to do a bit of your own research to make sure that you have all of the understanding of why your degree is what it is or what the equivalent is here in France so that you can advocate for yourself during those types of salary discussions. Okay. Great question, though. All right, let's see. Another question we have. How much percentage of a raise is normal to ask when you change into a new job? That's a great question too. Ideally, I would hope that when you are going into a new job position, you should be making at least 10 to 15% more than what you made in the last job you had. Ideally, it should be 15% or more. But to be honest, it really depends on your own abilities to advocate for yourself. And also depends on where you live and how realistic it is to jump salary numbers like that. I know in the United States, this can be a lot easier to do to kind of job hop and, get 20% more every single job. But in France, that's a lot harder to do. There is a bit of a junior level that you have to beat, after you have to get, at least maybe 3 to 4 years of experience before you can kind of get out of that junior mentality or junior salary. So that's good to be aware of. But in general, your goal would be 10 to 15% higher than your last salary. That's probably a nice mindset to have. With the students I work with, I usually give them, the mindset of about 15% more. That's probably your best option. But great questions. Awesome. All right, I think that is just about all of the questions we have listed here in the Q&A. Let me go ahead and check the chat to see if we have any other questions right here. Okay. Okay. So I think that we are coming about to a close. I don't think I see that many other questions. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for being here today. It was an absolute pleasure to present in front of all of you. I really want to say thank you again to Priska and the Women's Forum for organizing this event today. And of course, if you guys would like to get in touch with me, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You guys can find me on LinkedIn, of course. Or of course, if you want to contact me at my Ironhack email, you're welcome to do that as well.